Hello and welcome to Mind the Gap, the Disruptors Co webinar series connecting the big transformational themes of our times with public service, innovation and thought leadership. Today we're joined by social futurist Anne-Marie Elias and my co-CEO at Disruptors Co, Joanne Jacobs. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which you all work today and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people participating in this webinar. I am based on Darug land here in Sydney, and I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and waters of Australia. Welcome, Anne-Marie and Joanne. Can I start, Anne-Marie, by asking you a little bit about your background and how you've transitioned into this role as a social futurist?
Thanks, Gavin. I started my life in politics very early at the age of 16. My parents were very involved with the ALP at the time. So I got involved with the ALP even actually, I think I was about 15. And through that, I ended up at age 21 getting my first job as a policy advisor to the Minister for Immigration, a guy called Clyde Holding. So that was where I cut my teeth as a policy advisor. And really that's kind of where I stuck in and out, working for both sides of politics until my last stint in the Morrison government as senior policy advisor for industry, science and tech. And, so that's what I've done. And then a few years ago, Abby Bloom, who I've known since about 2011, and I got together and we thought, gosh, the narrative is very much still about aging and aged care as opposed to longevity. And we looked at the data and that kind of blew us away at the number of people turning 65 in 2030 and beyond. And just that we weren't ready for a lot of that. So I think my policy background made me realize that government's not going to solve anything, clearly. And it's really important to work with good data because that's how I've always convinced people to do things. And it's not like I'm a massive data genius, although I could say now I have become that. Just literally because I've had to use it. Even in government, you need a business case of why you want to do something, believe it or not. So I kind of kept flowing in and out of all these things, met you guys, worked on hackathons, which completely changed and transformed my life. Obviously, the back end of all of that is data. So I got more and more into understanding the importance of data. And then I ran hackathons for refugees, and that was Techfugees Australia with Annie Parker and Nicole Williamson. And we did that for almost 10 years. And then most recently, Abby and I founded Prime Life Partners, and that's where I guess the social futurist started emerging out of that, and obviously discussions with you, Gavin, and Catherine Ball, who started saying, no, you are a futurist. And I'm like, well, no, not really, because I don't do the whole data. It's not the data, it's the technology. I don't look at technology. However, I've always been that doomsayer of seeing what's going to happen socially. So it makes sense that I am a social futurist because I use the same thinking as, say, a tech futurist would, but I really, really look at the social impact of that. So here we are all these years later, and I have put in my application to do a PhD at UTS, none other than in the business school, of course, because I want to build a longevity retirement security index for Australia, starting with women. And that happens to fall in finance and actuarial, which who knew that that's where I would end up. So I'm just waiting to hear back whether I've been accepted to start my PhD there. And either way, I mean, data has been my best friend in understanding what's happening and being able to say now with all the data and AI and tech that we've got, surely we can predict who's going to be in trouble. I'm looking at retirement and superannuation. So I want to be able to predict who's going to be in trouble and see if we can't mitigate those risks. So that's me in a very big nutshell.
Love it. And I love the way, I do like this term social futurist because it really does feel like a good fit for you because you're spread across so many areas and have deep knowledge in so many different areas as well, and can articulate and identify problems really precisely, but then being able to surface those and engage with communities and then bring data to bear and then tell the story to government, to communities, to different organizations is a superpower that not everyone has. So I think it feels like a really strong fit for you. So yay.
Definitely, yes.
So let's talk about AI. And it feels like it's really noisy and moving fast all the time, but so therefore it feels like hype. But we do know that there are some real use cases, and you touched on a couple there before, especially helping to make technology inclusive, reaching diverse audiences, and especially those audiences who otherwise may not use technology or feel comfortable using technology. Is there stuff that you're seeing in your wanderings and your engagement with different communities? Are you seeing some people using things in a different way than we would otherwise expect?
Look, I think technology, has to be seen as an enabler rather than as a replacer. And I think the fear around AI and lots of other types of technology is that they don't see it as just an enabler of humans. They see it as it's going to replace humans. So what I've seen is that older people, much to many people's thinking, actually do use technology. And newsflash, older people, mature age, are now 45 and over.
That seems rather young for mature age.
You would think so, right? But that's government is now regarding that. So, and I think, we've all pretty much grown up with technology to a degree, like people that are, 45 and over. But I notice as well, like there's this lame idea, oh yeah, but old people, no, they don't really. Well, I remember like 10 years ago catching a train from Redfern to Ashfield and seeing Asian women playing games and FaceTiming with relatives on the train. So I've just never seen it. Then you look at the question that's asked in the census. The question is internet.
Right.
Internet. Do you have the internet? And people just say no. But if they have hearing aids, if they have a whole lot of tools like their diabetes checker, everything actually requires internet. And so the question that we're asking isn't correct, and it's swaying the way people perceive older people's access to technology.
Interesting.
That's definitely what I think. I remember something Michaela Jade, founder in Digital, said a number of years ago is that we need the diverse voices and faces and thinking to be working on AI in order for it not to be exclusive and for it to be inclusive. So having GLBTIQ plus people, having women, having older people, having people of many diverse cultures influencing and shaping the way AI and technology behaves is the only way we're going to equalize it. Otherwise, it is going to be exclusive. And I know that like lots of people are horrified or shocked that 30% of Australians have one or both parents overseas. But guess what? That has been the case since I arrived in Australia in 1972. It's not anything new. There's probably more non-English speaking background people now than there were at that time, but we've always had migrants from the UK, Canada, US, so they were English speaking migrants that arrived in this country. So, the diversity just is Australia. And my understanding is a lot of the tech companies will use Australia as a testing ground because of that, because of the physical diversity and the language diversity. So, like with anything, we just need to make sure people are shaping the technology and aren't left out of it. And the stuff that I'm seeing, so I care for someone with a disability, and the stuff that I'm seeing them work with is quite incredible. So, medication reminders, scheduling, all of that. But what I'm also noticing is everything's separate, everything's siloed. This is Apple, this is Amazon, this is that, this is that. And that's not a person's real life, right? So if any of these companies bothered to speak to the users, they would find that people have a cross-section of tools that they need actually integrated together. So I think that's kind of the risk, is that people don't see that, you're not going to be using Apple for everything, and that you've got a spreadsheet that's in Microsoft and you've got Amazon Alexa, which is collecting information. So how do you really, we've been talking about IoT for 20 years, but this to me is now like I can understand IoT in that sense. right? Bringing everything together, but seamlessly, and not worrying about what brand.
Yeah. By IoT, you're referring to Internet of Things, right?
Yes. Yeah. So that integration of the technology, say, for example, in the home, and being able to, integrate things and just make it easier. Now, also with AI, right, which, I haven't quite understood how people are using it, but it's so much easier because the person I care for is asking constantly, hey, Alexa, or hey, Google, or hey, this. And so then the only concern is the accuracy of the information that's provided.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting challenge moving ahead, I think.
Yeah.
Joe, we're sort of seeing some really cool things with AI, but it does rely on solid data sources. But also, what about the idea of being or having access to the technology in the first place? Are we seeing sort of gaps there in between who has and who doesn't have access to AI, to the internet, to these devices?
So, I mean, Annie's just said that, probably more people have access to the technologies than they think they do. Even if they've got a phone, they might have access to it. And increasingly, these kinds of AI tools are available on phones, and people are playing with it. People are beginning to play, particularly with things like ChatGPT or like Gemini or like Google's Gemini or like Anthropic's Claude, just to have these conversations. And for older people, as a case in point, Annie, the idea of having someone that you can talk to is kind of nice. But is there a danger there that they might actually become reliant on these technologies, or that they might actually receive information that could actually be dangerous to them? Did you have any take on that, Annie?
Yeah, I do. So, like looking at, say, someone that has care needs who's got, say, 10, 15 workers coming in and out of their lives, and you think, okay, well, what can AI do to minimize that? So that then also the person that's coming in, the physical social carer, is actually doing things with this person, taking them out, looking up more activities, whatever. Whereas the AI will do the basic reminders, right? Like, don't forget to take your medication, or good morning, here's what's planned out for today. This is your first appointment, this is your last, this is your social carer picking you up. Just all of that, which you don't really need a person to do that. So it's not about that, I'm not even thinking of a humanoid robot at this stage. I'm just thinking of like an Alexa that's just more sophisticated and able to say, oh, Gavin, I noticed that on your life goal canvas, you're interested in fencing. So here's a fencing competition coming up on the 3rd of September. Here's the link, right? Like, I mean, it would take me hours to find that stuff, and it does. Like, I'm looking this stuff up all the time, and I'm thinking, no, it doesn't need my time and energy for that. The other thing I think people are using it for is recipes and things. The danger is to replace the person, and I don't think AI can be a friend long term. I think it can be a step in, sort of helping you organize your day, booking things, knowing what costs of things are, or recipes or whatever. But in terms of friendship, you actually need real people, and you need to get out and get some sunshine and do some exercise and all of that sort of thing. So again, if we can emphasize AI and technology as an enabler, as an augmenter of the human experience, rather than, oh, the AI is now going to be your friend and it's going to be this. So even the case study that they're using in nursing homes, I think it's in Canberra or something. So they've got some robot going around playing some games with people. Yeah, I mean, occasionally that's okay, but hopefully they've done the exercise, they've actually spoken to a real person, and this is, for, say, the people like my mum that never really wanted to leave their room, and then that robot is going around and just checking, in lieu of some physical person coming in. So I think, again, like augmenting, facilitating, enhancing, but not replacing. I think that's the danger, and people are now having AI robots, boyfriend robots or whatever, AI boyfriends. And look, it's great. You can ask some interesting questions, but we're losing our humanity by relying on a machine that's literally just a data bank of searching for stuff and saying, oh yeah, definitely have a look at this. You know, it still needs someone to input and shape that, right? Especially for people with disabilities, right? Like now thinking of it, thinking, well, no, this can't just be an off-the-shelf thing. Like the family needs to input what this machine does and how it thinks, almost like emulating the parent, right? And just holding that knowledge, but knowing that there are people coming and going in between all of that are doing the real life connection, right? The human side of things, because, you know, I can't tell you, the guy that I look after, when he smiles, that smile lights up a room. And I don't know if AI is going to be able to tell him that at the end of a shift, you know, like, you know, we go to things and I'm like, I'm so proud of you. That was fantastic. Like you went and introduced yourself to people and you did that. Like, is AI going to do that? Maybe eventually, but right now it's not doing that. Right now it's saying, and now it's time for bed and have your medication.
Well, I mean, the thing is that it can do that, but it's faking it. So it's kind of being sycophantic rather than necessarily being, being human, I guess.
And, you know, it has its uses, right? Like, so think of the things you don't want to work up to know, right? Like your budget, your finances, your income, your expenditure. You know, they're things you don't want any person outside of your family to have access to that. So again, you know, that's something that technology can protect, isolate, but also think like a parent to be able to say, hey, you're halfway through your budget this year, you know, or this week, or you've got $20 left for physical activity. You know, just things like that, yeah, a worker can do it, but they would need to then have access to financials, which I don't think is appropriate. So you can use it like that. What don't you want a person to know and be in control of, and you mete it out like that. But, you know, I think also because of the cost of care in the future, like that's what worries me, is that we're not going to have I don't know, by the time I'm older, it's going to be like $100 an hour for someone just to come and sit with me and take me shopping. It's like, you know what I mean? I have limited super. I can't be doing that. So we need to think.
Yeah. So where does that fit? So we also talk about, or we hear about a lot about responsible AI. So if we think about the guardrails, we think about the regulations and those sorts of things, where does that all fit? You know, do we need regulations? Do we need the government to provide guidelines? Do we need public service to provide frameworks?
God, no. We don't need public servants to provide anything, thank you. You know, like, no, please. Like, you know, they're limiting the use of AI within the public service. So what the freaking hell are they going to know about anything? So that's kind of what concerns me, is you don't have that. And ultimately, the only safeguard that I know, right, is user experience. You know, work with the people that are the end users, and they will tell you exactly what's working, what isn't, you know, and everyone does lip service to that. But as you both know, it doesn't actually happen. And so you get these systems that are built for systems as opposed to for people, right? The NDIS is like a perfect example of that. It's so systems driven, you know, and the cost blowout, contrary to popular opinion, isn't necessarily the people, it's the administrative nightmare that is around that, right? So the NDIA is costing us, you know, millions and millions of dollars every year. That's the agency. And then the processes where someone with severe intellectual disability has to get tested every year or something, like completely redundant things, right? So it's that kind of admin and bureaucracy. So you do not want government to regulate anything. I think what we just have to do is just, if they're going to regulate anything, is this user experience. But then that they are so bad at it themselves. Like, I mean, look at Service New South Wales or Service Australia. New South Wales is a lot better, by the way. But do you know what I mean? It's like they're not good at rolling out things, you know, effectively, even the COVID app and all that sort of stuff. So the only thing that they need to do is make sure that there is some sort of guardrails around human-centered focus.
Mhm.
And look, I did propose an AI tax in the last government, and they said no. But we do need to start thinking about that, because if AI is going to displace hundreds of thousands of jobs, AI is not paying taxes, which is therefore who's paying the taxes when 150 people get taken out of Atlassian? Who's paying those taxes? No one. So we're going to have a mismatch in how many people are paying taxes versus how many people are needing to offload the system, right? So people that are largely on age pension or at part age pension, people on disability, people on unemployment benefits, you need tax revenue to be able to pay for that. And if that isn't happening, then, unfortunately, I think we're going to be waiting until it's all gone terribly wrong, and then they're going to react, which is the best thing government can do. Oh, geez, that's really terrible. I'm such a terrible person. I just look, guys, I mean, you just look at hindsight, right? Like, I mean, what have they solved? And you want them to tell us what to do? Like, yeah, they're going to make us log in as if we're all 12-year-olds now, like, I don't want them thinking too much about that. But also, are corporates responsible? Are startups responsible?
Right. Yes.
Is there ethical?
Who's going to lift the bar, I guess?
Yeah, and yeah.
I mean, to me, it's also an issue all around how do you backdate these things, and what could possibly go wrong when we all have to log into a system and all of our credentials are available in a system somewhere to actually check who we are. So I'm going to come back. So if government can't regulate or shouldn't regulate, who does the guardrails? Is it like the Diversity Council of Australia, or is it a non-profit? Who do you reckon is the right person to do the guardrails, to prepare the guardrails, Anne-Marie?
I really don't know, because I don't think, who's been good at providing guardrails for anything else? Like, that's what I'd be trying to deconstruct that way and go, okay, who's done a really good job? I don't know. Maybe the Human Rights Commission needs to have now an AI technology commissioner, because this is a human rights issue that it's starting, right? Like, it's so random, but I don't know anything else. And look, I'm very, very happy with Robert Fitzgerald, who's the Age Discrimination Commissioner. I think he's doing some really great work. And so I think maybe all the commissioners have to take on an AI lens, right? And think, well, how does older people, how do people with disabilities, how do women, how do refugees and migrants, how do all these people input into that? So actually, I don't think you need this across everything. So you can't have, here's another body, because they won't talk to anyone. Look at Data 61 and CSIRO. Boom. Right? Like, there's this tension and this competitiveness which shouldn't be there for things that are so important to the public. So, normally I'd say Data 61, but I don't know that Data 61 necessarily has the human-centered side, right? So maybe Data 61 and CSIRO, in collaboration with Human Rights Commission, Diversity Council, blah, 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 maybe something like that. And it has to be across. The other thing is company directors. Like, company directors, we funded company directors learning about technology, upskilling in technology when I was in government. And it's like, I'm sure they're still not, let alone AI, let alone longevity, let alone all these other things. So, and I think the problem is we keep layering things on and creating another agency, which then takes money away from everything, rather than saying this is so important, this has to be lifted across. So parallel universe, that's what I tried to do with the whole of government ageing strategy in New South Wales, right? It was stupid. The Minister for Ageing has the seniors concerts and a couple of other things. And it's like, we do so much more for people that are aging. like the clubs and the sporting events and, like lots of things, the transport concessions and all of that. So it's not just seniors concert, but then in order to document that and calculate that, you had to go by every department and say, how much are you spending on people aged 55 and over, 65 and over and whatever. And you start to go, wow, every agency has that. So the idea of that was to have a whole of government aging strategy that every department was cognizant of an aging population, not just the Minister for Aging. So that's what I reckon. We need a whole of government and community AI strategy. Dare I say, Data 61 and Karen Andrews, who was the minister at the time, approved the National AI strategy. And, we did work really hard to make sure that had human-centred things in it, because it really didn't initially. But Stefan did a great job in rewriting it and including some stuff around ageing and disability, right, which was a growing field, but not in 2019 necessarily. So, things like that, I think that's where we have to go. We have to go high. We don't create, please don't create another agency. Like I want to cry. I just go like literally, it's just going to be hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars going somewhere else. And it's not making everyone responsible for it.
Right. So I think you're kind of answering one of my next questions, which was about what are some of the risks that with AI that are going to impact inclusiveness and diversity, and I think you're sort of speaking to exactly some of those in that approach. But how do we make it better? So I remember when we were doing that work with New Horizons and Unboxed, and what we learnt was if we design for people with disability, we design for everybody.
Everyone, yeah.
So that's kind of.
I often use the example of the slip curbs, right? The slip in the curbs that we all see, that we all love and use, and they were initially designed for people with wheelchairs, and then they realised, people in crutches use them, people with prams use them, delivery people use them. So it's now something exactly you design for people with disabilities, and everyone's actually included. So I guess that is really important. I mean, AARP, right, which is the seniors organization in America, which is like amazing, right? It's huge. They've been running sessions teaching older people how to use AI to map out their travel plans.
Oh, okay. Very cool.
Right? So again, it's like, how do we all, whether you're a not-for-profit, whether you're a government agency, think about how to make people's lives easier and mitigate the risks, which there are risks of being online at all, and all of that. But, this could enable people with disabilities so much. And you guys are as old as I am, so you would remember the World Wide Web Consortium. And all of that had like so many guidelines around accessibility. And I remember talking to people with disabilities back then where they were like, oh my God, like it was so exciting to be part of something and people not even know if you had a disability or not. Yeah. So, we did good with that. Maybe that's the World Wide Web Consortium is an analogy of something that did work, right? Because that did affect everyone. Right, and
it's 30 years old.
Okay, well, maybe they take this on because they were able to affect every level of government, corporate, community about the importance of this. So, so much respect to that, because that was a difficult, very difficult thing, and people didn't know at all, but now we know a lot more. And so I would trust them to consider how they can take on the AI mantle now. And ensure that that's accessible and inclusive. And, the concern is how people are going to get duped, right? Like already we saw a couple of years ago where we were all getting phone calls from our children. Oh, hi, Mum, I've lost my number. Can you send through? So that was already happening. Now imagine with visual. Hi, Nan. Hi, Nana. And all of that. So that's the stuff that really, really concerns me, that it's getting so real and not in a good way, that it could dupe a lot of people that are vulnerable. So I don't know how you mitigate that, but you need to teach people, right? People need to be self-aware, but, you know, I mean, I don't know. These scammers are getting very, very sophisticated.
Well, I mean, the interesting news story that's just come out in the last few days is the case by the Rain family against Sam Altman from OpenAI and ChatGPT. Where very sadly their son, the Rain's son Adam, committed suicide after 6 months of being on, or less than 6 months of being on ChatGPT, and it felt real to him. And you know, the conversations that teenager had with ChatGPT felt so real, and he wasn't being duped. He was trusting that this platform or this chatbot was the only thing that really understood him. So if it can happen to a digital native,
yes,
it can happen to anyone. And so what guardrails do you put in place? Now, I mean, Altman has said that he's now actually going to give parents the rights to look at kids' use of AI, but maybe it's not just parents, right? Maybe we all need to have that capacity to check on each other to make sure that we're not overusing or using it in a way that is unhealthy.
And Soldierly was looking at stuff like that could detect early, you know, signs of something where the parent gets notified, where, you know, or whatever, like their best friend or their sibling, like, you know, but that's something you'd have to input and say, like, who you would want to give access to if there's any danger. But that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I remember, I think at a hackathon years ago, we had someone looking at the chat messages in Facebook that was going to do something. Remember? And that was more to do with managing domestic violence.
Yeah.
From memory, but the same sort of disciplines apply here, I think. You know, running bots or, you know, sort of searches across patterns in behavior or patterns in language that are indicative of behaviors we don't want to see happening. Are interesting, but also challenging, right? Because then, you know, do you trust Mark Zuckerberg with this information, right? So it's a bit of a minefield.
Do you know, it's almost like we need security guards. Listen to this, right? Like, I am serious, right? What other solution is there unless we all have a tailor-made security guard that helps with cyber and all other security threats? Right? Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know how else to do it, right? Because even me, the other day, I got a phone call from someone that said, oh, you know, we're from the fraud department at NAB, and they were trying to get all my details. And I'm like, no. And they're like, no. And then they kept ringing me back. So I rang my bank and they're like, no suspicious activity whatsoever.
Right. Good to know.
I was very close to saying, oh, gosh. You know, there's been a breach of my account, right? So let me give you my account details and all of that. So they're getting very, very clever. And these are humans. This isn't even AI, right? So AI is going to be even more amazing because it's going to be able to trick you a lot quicker, I think. So
that's one of the downsides of AI. I must admit that the scammers are getting better because their language is way better than it used to be.
So
how do we have AI security guards?
And what impact does that have to our personal privacy? I mean, the thing about diversity and equity and inclusion is that you want to have everybody involved, but if you're policing that by personal security, what impact is that having on inclusion, and what impact is it having on other human rights like privacy, the right to privacy, the right to disconnect?
Yeah. Well, it's like, I remember years ago I met a woman called Amber Case, who's a AI technology sort of suprema, and she was saying the greatest commodity of our time is going to be attention, because, you know, getting our attention and keeping our attention, because in fact we're on 24/7, and this was like 10 years ago she was saying this, right? Your Facebook profile doesn't shut down at midnight when you go to bed. Right. So you're constantly being interacted with, like 24 hours a day. So I think it is a real risk because we are so exposed. I mean, you know, all the different channels. And that's why it makes me laugh when people say, oh, you're going to give your information there. And it's like, well, Facebook pretty much has everything, you know, like the stuff that we sign over when we do download an app is ridiculous. I don't even know half the stuff I'm signing over to, but I do it because I need the app, you know. So I think it's going to get worse because we're going to just be so bombarded with so many different things. And there isn't going to be a line in the sand that says, well, this is when Anne-Marie goes to sleep and we're not engaging after this time on social media. Like there's no engagement. You can't leave me a message after 8 p.m. or whatever, you know, but we're not game to do that, right? Because we always want to be on and, you know, get those bings and things.
Oh, I don't know. There are times when I go to bed that I turn everything off.
Yeah, no, I'm very happy to turn everything off. I have a bedtime reminder at 8:30 saying you better wind down.
Nice. Hey, so we've just skipped past our half hour mark. I do want to be respectful of everybody's time. If there was one thing that people took away from this webinar, Anne-Marie, what would that thing be? What would you suggest they look at or think about?
I think be vigilant about technology and AI. I think don't be afraid of it. I think there's some really, really great uses. I think that for vulnerable people, they have to have that extra bit of concern because there are things like that example that Joe gave, which is really concerning. You know, and I guess like really it's going to, the teachers are going to hate this, but it is education. These people are not real. Right. But then you think, right, of men and sex workers, and they seem to think that that relationship is real, right? So how do you break that? I don't know, but it's something we really do have to think of because I don't want my kids to think that inanimate object is their friend. And therefore not engage in real life. So that is really, really worrying to me. So partly it's education. You know, I see people on Twitter all the time saying, oh, I met this Russian model and I sent money and she's not coming. And I think and these are older men, right? And you just think, what is wrong with people? Like literally, and that's probably an avatar. Yeah. Right? Or a guy. Dressed as a girl or whatever.
It's probably a guy. I mean,
so you know,
in terms of distrust, more women distrust AI than men. Most men are more men than women are likely to trust that AI is benign or is a good thing. About half of women don't think it's a good thing. But yeah, I can see why men think that it's a real model.
Yeah. So, I mean, if older men and tech-savvy people are getting duped by this, then we've got a lot of work to do in letting people understand that these things aren't real, that they're a good enabler. Like if you need to augment or enable something, like improve your experience of something, but it doesn't replace the human interaction and things like that. So I think that's really important. And look, you know, I saw it even, you know, in aged care, that robot, it does worry me a bit. Like, yes, it's fun and it's cute, but you don't want people only having that contact.
That's right.
You know, as their social outlet, right? Because they can't walk, therefore they can't go to the lounge room, they can't go and participate in activities. Whereas what I would like is for that robot to say, hey, Jan, did you know that there's badminton in the lounge room now? Come on, let's go. More a facilitator, like you said, Joe. You said it beautifully. It's a facilitator, not a replacer. And I think that's what we have to really think about. And, you know, I love that AARP is teaching people how to use it to plan their holidays because, again, things like that can be really good.
Get you out.
But is there an Australian chat GPT, for example, that is safe? Like what is the safest GPT or AI tool at the moment? I don't know. But maybe our seniors organisations should be building one that is safe for everyone. I don't know.
language model, creating a new language model with safety guardrails. I mean, that's a possibility. I mean, it's not just the top 5, right? It's not just Gemini and ChatGPT and Anthropic and Grok and Copilot. It's not just those top 5. There are other language models out there.
Yes.
They just tend to be more specialist, and they're more specialist around a thing. Maybe it makes sense to have a large language model for an aging population that is specially designed for people who are aging.
Yeah.
With diverse experiences.
Opportunity in the market for those of you watching.
There really is.
A large language model for people who are aging. Yeah.
Which is everyone, really, right? Like, apparently at 45-year-old now, you're a mature age person. Sorry.
That makes me ancient.
Well, you know, I'm totally a pensioner now. So, but you know, and that's the other thing, right? Like, I remember not having done it for a while, but like I would say to ChatGPT a few months ago, oh, you know, show me a 50-year-old, and it would literally show me someone who was 80. Yeah. Right? Like,
it still does that.
Again, it still does that. Oh God. Okay. Yeah. So I don't know how to change that, but like, that's just unrealistic. But then you look at media, and media is completely unrealistic, right? Yes. Like they'll go and talk about aging in terms of aged care. They're still not getting the whole longevity thing. So
it's the downside of the training models, right? They're all being trained on people who have time to sit in front of a computer and train the AI in what they think reality is, right? So,
but I think Annie's right as well in that media is unrealistic as well, not just in terms of focusing just on the elderly, but if you actually look at the people in the media, you do tend to have a lot of people between the ages of 25 and 45, and then nothing until, and then you get some fabulous people like Robin Williams from the Science Show, which has just celebrated 50 years of the Science Show, and he's an elderly gentleman now, effectively, but you know, you get this kind of gap. So if you say what is wrong with all of the visual engines that you ask for an older person and it does some 180, maybe it's because of the fact that what it's been trained on has been literally anyone aged between 25 and 45, and then nothing until you get really older people.
But it's also perspective. I remember thinking myself when I was in my 20s that someone in their 30s was quite old. And and it's still the same, right? So if you're 20, someone who's 10 years older than you seems like they're very old. So therefore, someone who's 50 seems ancient, and yet someone who is 80 or 90 is like, oh my God, right? So it's just that experience. So
and that's where AI can really be more futurist, actually, and be saying, well, people are living to 100. So in fact, 45 is midlife. Right? Like your baby cakes at 45, you know, and it should be helping form those opinions because the population is aging. So it's not, though, right? It's not, because it's still being shaped by people in their 20s who have no concept of that social future.
I mean,
until they get there.
There's also diversity at the other end, right? So it's also about, you know, young people need to be included, and increasingly with AI perhaps taking jobs, that young people are going to find it harder and harder to get a job. So you know, there is a danger to some extent that the same things that are same applications, the same technologies that are not included or not engaging people of different ethnicity, age, sexuality, ability, etc. Those biases actually get baked in for a long, long time, because then you still have no new people coming in through the system as well to actually change how it's operating. So it can inclusion is one of the greatest challenges, I would imagine, for AI.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, it sounds like a social futurist has plenty of work ahead of her.
Yeah, you've got a big future, Annie.
Well, we all do, really. Like, I mean, we've all got our concerns about this, and I think the World Wide Web Consortium, I'm sticking with that. I think that's a great model because it's already done it once in the coming through of the World Wide Web, and it managed to maintain some standards around accessibility that everyone had to adhere to. How did they do that? It was just a bunch of people.
Early days.
Yeah.
But there was also, there was a great sense of spirit in the early days of the web, right? So we had, we all felt like we were creating a new future, a new inclusive future, and it was a priority. And the question is inclusion a priority now?
These questions and more.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks both Joanne and Anne-Marie for joining me today. This has been a really great conversation. I'm really looking forward to actually listening back and taking a few notes myself. I'd like to thank you both for joining me, and I'd like to thank any viewers for joining us, and also to make sure that you come to the Disruptors Co website and sign up for our newsletter so that you get advance notice of any of these ongoing webinars, which we run every couple of weeks. Thanks again for joining us. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.